Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 online action. Today we're back with the Empire and the High Elves. I'm actually playing as the High Elves. We're taking on an Empire player, so let's get straight to the builds here. For myself, I've got a front line of Spearmen. We've got the Puremain Company as well, hidden in the woods here. 2 units of Dragon Princes, also hidden in the woods in the back. 2 Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, and Alariel the Radiant up in the air, as well as some Illyrian Reavers up in Vanguard here. For my opponent, he's got Boris Todbringer also in the air, 2 groups of Reiksguard, one of them with an Amber Wizard supporting. He's got Flock of Doom and Amber Spear. Another group of Reiksguard over here, the Zintler's Reiksguard actually. Looks like a front line of Spearmen with Shields, Sigmar's Sons, more Spearmen with Shields. We've got Halberdiers out to the side, Silver Bullets, more Spearmen protecting the Hammer of Witches. So without further ado, let's get the battle underway. You can see my Illyrian Reaver is going to be doing a bit of skirmishing here. Also, rather than doing counter battery fire on the Hammer of Witches, I'm going to go ahead and just immediately start focusing my Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers onto the Reiksguard, because they are obviously a priority target here. These are actually the Royal Altdorf Griffites here in the center, so yeah, being able to kind of kite them out here, get some solid damage done with the Bolt Throwers. Ooh, a nasty Amber Spear just cuts through a whole bunch of those Illyrian Reaver archers, and the Hammer of Witches also doing some really good work there as well. My opponent, though, being way too aggressive here with the Royal Altdorf Griffites, going to end up getting some nasty missiles there. Meanwhile, Boris gets hit by an Overcast Tempest. Granted, because of his healing, he'll be able to regenerate a lot of this damage back, but we need to start eating away at his healing cap now, as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Alariel comes down just to stop up the Royal Altdorf Griffites, and while this is incredibly risky and seems really stupid on paper, these Royal Altdorf Griffites are actually just in the line of fire. They're in the kill zone, so to speak, of the archers and the bolt throwers, so I pinned them down long enough so that we can basically finish off their leadership. And yeah, Royal Altdorf Griffites dealt with, so one priority target down. The Reiksguard come in and definitely get around my flank and shut down the Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers. Unfortunately, a little bit too late here. But unfortunately for me, I was a little bit late in responding with my my Dragon Princes. I could have potentially actually protected from this charge completely. But that being said, I'm going to use the Reavers just to kind of stand in the back line here. I could pull them back, but I'm actually just going to let them take this charge here so that the Dragon Princes can then come in and start to clean up. And we've also dispatched some of the spears, since they're not fighting anything in the front line, to come down into the back line and start supporting the Dragon Princes there. You can see the Hammer of Witches does start to open up shots on the Dragon Princes, but as we're kind of out towards the extreme edge of its range, it's not necessarily going to be getting the most accurate fire. You can see there in the front line, looks like Flock of Doom going down, doing some okay damage. Boris had charged in, but went ahead and pulled back. Archers are secure for the time being, and we're just keeping the Puremain Company on station to deal with Boris when he comes down. The archers go ahead and start to shoot at the Amber Wizard, which he doesn't have a whole lot of armor. He's also taking a lot of damage from the Spearmen, so he goes down, and all of a sudden Boris is down on the ground here as well. That Tempest did actually affect him, so his speed is debuffed, and he's taking damage from the Tempest, not to mention the Archers and the Spearmen, and the Puremain Company as well, debuffing Boris's armor here, bringing him down to only 55, so if the Archers are able to pull back here and get some fire, like this unit is doing, it will do a lot more damage because of that armor sundering of the Puremain Company, which is, again, the main reason why I bring them, is for that armor sundering. And at this point, I'm about to cast an Arcane Unforging on Boris, and my opponent has already admitted defeat there, as we've been able to neutralize quite a few of his high-value targets. And yeah, I mean, honestly, my opponent's build wasn't too bad. I think that there are a few things you could do to fine-tune it, yeah, he did make a few key mistakes as well. We're going to be taking a look at another replay after this with the reverse, where I'm playing the Empire versus the High Elves, so I can kind of show you guys how I like to go about this particular matchup. But Alariel here definitely did the work she needed to, which honestly wasn't a whole lot. It was mostly just tempesting Boris and providing a little bit of healing here and there. Didn't even have to use the Star of Averlorn. The Dragon Princes, again, just came in and cleaned up the Reiksguard, who, I mean, I definitely understand from my opponent's perspective wanting to shut down those Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers. My Dragon Princes were hidden. Unfortunately, he just played way too aggressively there with the Royal Altdorf Griffites and everything. Rather than responding to my Illyrian Reavers, the appropriate course of action would have just been to pull back and wait and let the Hammer of Witches shoot my cavalry. You know, the Reavers, if they're up trying to skirmish, you've got the Amber Spear, you've got the Hammer of Witches. There's really no need to chase them with your heavy cavalry, even if you do manage to catch them out. you're going to be taking damage in the process. You're potentially going to be separating yourself from your own army, and you're also going to be putting yourself in harm's way from the high elf artillery. So best to keep your cavalry in reserve and just try and win through skirmish in that situation. I mean, he even had the silver bullets as well, who could have come forward and returned fire on the Illyrian Reaver archers, and that would have been an effective way to deal with them as well. But thankfully for me, I was able to kind of bait him into sending his cavalry forward there piecemeal, and because they were isolated from the infantry, you can see his infantry didn't get involved in the fight at all. And this is a pretty common mistake for newer players. It's a mistake I even still make sometimes, which is to not bring the whole house, so to speak, at the same time. It's very, very important that you don't engage piecemeal, especially with your expensive cavalry units. You need them to have the infantry support. So again, best to hold them back, and even if you don't plan on just sitting back and using your artillery and so on to try and force the high elves to come to you, you at least want to be advancing, your cavalry in such a way that they're not going to be in harm's way for as long as possible, and you want them to come and arrive at the engagement and make their impact basically at the same time as your infantry. You obviously don't want to blob everything up, but the whole concept of, again, bringing the whole house at the same time, you just want them to not engage piecemeal there, otherwise they'll get torn apart a little bit. But moving on to this next replay here. So in terms of fine-tuning things against the Empire, for my opponent's build from the previous game, I would definitely cut the halberdiers. I think halberdiers against the high elves are really risky because they're more expensive and they don't have shields. Spearmen with shields and swordsmen are going to be the way to go in the front line. They'll trade cost-effectively enough with most of the high elf infantry that you'll be fine. Also, the high elves just don't bring a lot of bodies to the table, so going with cheaper infantry allows you to go wider and just bring more units than the high elves, which in and of itself is sort of a counter to them. Of course, I also, again, didn't bring any flying units. Everything's on the ground. We've got a little bit wider. Pretty similar builds, though, at the end of the day. Let's take a look here. We've got the Archlector, of course, supporting the Royal Author of Griffites, as is my current favorite combination in the game. We've also got the Reiksguard over on the side, and another group of Reiksguard on the left, a third group in the center, so I do have a little bit more heavy cavalry as well. We've got the Hammer of Witches, Jade Wizard here rather than an Amber Wizard. Front line, again, is all state troops, and we do also have the silver bullets, so a pretty similar build. My opponent, though, has brought something pretty different than what I had brought, but still pretty powerful, I think. He's got Tyrion on a horse. You don't get to see Tyrion too much anymore, sadly, because the other High Elf Lords are just so good. Alariel and Teclis in particular are amazing, but he does have the Sunfang, Fate and Riposte, Stand Your Ground, as well as the Heart of Averlorn. He's also got a Mage with Lore of Life, Regrowth, and Earthblood. Nothing wrong with that. Back line of archers, 4 archers, 2 Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers, Spearmen and White Lions in the front line, and a single group of the Dragon Princes, the Regiment of Renown Fireborn. And that's pretty much it, so let's get the battle rolling. You can see the Hammer of Witch is going to be firing into the front line, obviously, since the Fireborn are currently hidden. My most expensive target to shoot at is these White Lions. It looks like I actually trained on the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower for a moment, but now switching over to the White Lions. Doing the whole counter battery fire could potentially be effective here, but, I figure against 2 Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers shooting at the same time, it's potentially going to be tough to win, and I'm going to be basically relying on RNG, so rather than doing that, I can try and generate some, for sure value by shooting at these White Lions. Granted, it's not going to do a whole lot, but at this point, I know I'm probably going to lose the infantry battle, or the artillery battle, but it looks like I actually switched targets over to the Eagle Claw Bolt Thrower. Do manage to finish off a single artillery piece, but again, the counter battery fire is going to be pretty rough. Meanwhile, over on the side here, my cavalry were advancing through the woods, doing some scouting, obviously, trying to make sure these woods were clear, and we did manage to discover the Fireborn, who are now fleeing back to their own lines, sensing that this is a huge cavalry force, which, I mean, they are greatly outnumbered here, but they're going to go ahead and stand and fight since they can't really get away at this point. We've got the Royal Author of Griffites, 2 groups of Reiksguard, and the Archlector are going to come in and drop his support buffs, of course, as well, and the Fireborn are in for a tough time. Granted, my opponent is going to start dumping some healing into them. You can see they've already taken a lot of damage, though, down to only half HP, but they do get that Overcast Regrowth, giving them a ton of physical resistance. These guys are up to, like, what, 69% physical resistance, so during this time, they're going to take very little damage and get that nice, sweet healing, so he is able to stabilize somewhat. Tyrion comes down here, I believe. Yep, he's in here fighting as well. A little bit risky for him to fight the Royal Altar fights, but, you know, he just needs to hold this pocket in place. Meanwhile, in the front line, a bit of mixed results here. White Lions are beating state troops. You can see my cannon still online with maybe 1 or 2 guns left. Looks like the last gun just blows up now. So the state troops swordsmen, though, in certain pockets doing very well. The Reichsguard, one group had come, crunched through these white lines and pushed into the back line and is now mucking up this bolt thrower. It's getting into the archers. We've been able to, again, just because of the numbers game here, because I went with a wider army, I'm able to fix all the high elf infantry in place, more or less, so they literally don't have enough units to respond to this group of Reichsguard. There's just nothing in this back line that's able to protect. I mean, the white lines did break through the front line, but then overcommitted a little bit in chasing off that other group of swordsmen. But this pitched cavalry engagement is just still going on. Empire state troop spearmen have come in to support, but now the double support coming in from the high elf spearmen as well. So it's a pretty pitched engagement, and the Fireborn have been able to hang around for a long time. You can see they're just about at their healing cap, actually, because of the healing just being dumped into them from the life mage there, who is also come to get involved in the combat here. You can see the Reichsguard have taken a lot of damage. Both groups of Reichsguard down way below half HP, but the Royal Altar Griffites, still 24 full unit models, still a ton of health. My healing's all been going into the Royal Altar Griffites, obviously. A little bit into the Reichsguard as well with Earthbloods and stuff, but primarily the Royal Altar Griffites, who finally go ahead and terrify away the Fireborn here. And yeah, we're going to make sure to chase them off the side of the field. Don't want them coming back from route and getting more healing. So the Royal Altar Griffites and the Archlector go ahead and peel off and go there. Meanwhile, the Reichsguard, I'm going to try and unify them all into one kind of cavalry death blob and just start rolling around these different units here and just, you know, taking advantage of that charge bonus as much as possible. I mean, Reichsguard, probably one of the most survivable units of shock cavalry in the game in terms of their armor, their melee defense. They can stand and fight for longer than most other shock cavalry, but at the end of the day, they are still shock cavalry. So you want to be charging them around, you know, ping-ponging around, like I like to say, moving on to different units. You can see I come in, I fight for about, you know, 5 to 10 seconds, then immediately move on to the next target. And we're going to be just continuously doing that here in the back line, running down these archers, these, you know, these bolt thrower crews, even the spearmen while they're unbraced. The high elf spearmen will take a lot of shock damage there. You can see, unfortunately for me though, my infantry is pretty much completely gone. I mean, we've got one group of swordsmen here. The Sigmar Sons did clean up in the center, along with this group of a couple of tattered groups of spearmen with shields. So still a couple of infantry units left, but for the most part, I'm going to be relying on my cavalry here. You can see a nice Earthblood going in, healing up this big Reichsguard death blob. And they're just going to be continuously rolling around, and at this point, again, I've got infantry to fix my opponent's infantry in place. So the Sigmar Sons especially going to be very cost effective at trading with the high elf spearmen here. My opponent's trying to drop some healing, but here comes the rear charge. Since they're fixed in place, a true hammer and anvil coming down on the elves. Just riding them down through the back here, and you can see the spearmen don't like that at all. Don't have a lot of armor, and just about dropped the martial prowess off both. Looks like the one did drop, the other one's still hanging on to their martial prowess for the time being. But yeah, archers coming back from route are going to be vulnerable to getting charged down. You can see the Royal Altar Griffites come in, and their armor piercing is what I'm going to use to try and deal with the White Lions here. Of course, they've got Terror as well, and the Reichsguard are going to follow up and just apply that much more pressure just to make sure we get the Terror route going. And then, yeah, and then the Archlector is going to come in and go to Pound Town on the Life Mage. Need to make sure to shut off the healing at this point, just so that, you know, nothing tries to come back. Probably should have shut it off a little bit earlier, but my opponent did a good job in keeping his healer alive. That being said, Tyrion's pretty much the only healthy unit for the High Elves left on the field, so we'll go ahead and fast forward a little bit through this late game, as it's pretty much just me kind of ping-ponging around. Oh yeah, let's get this glorious charge, though, right at the end. The High Elf Archers just full-on sailing through the air, landing in a ditch, and just getting ridden down by the Reichsguard. Truly, truly glorious, man. Can't tell you how much I love Reichsguard. One of my favorite units in the game, not only aesthetically, but because they kind of epitomize the Empire. You know, they are the Empire to a degree. They're good at most things. They're not the best at any one thing, but they can hang in there. They can do well at just about any play style. And in just about any engagement. Now, granted, they're still not a silver bullet. I mean, the Empire does have silver bullets, but you know what I mean. They're not an auto win, certainly, and that's also true of the Empire. The Empire takes some skill to use, as do Reichsguard. But yeah, they're one of the strongest factions in the game right now, in my opinion. You guys can feel free to disagree with that, but with the faith buffs on the Royal Altar for fights, with their combined arms, and just the myriad of different strategies that you can take, makes it hard to game plan against the Empire. I mean, granted, you can probably expect some heavy cavalry, but as you guys saw from one of the replays a couple days ago, where Kark was able to beat a pretty dangerous Dark Elf army with no cavalry whatsoever, I mean, you can even go that route, and it's still dangerous. So the Empire definitely, I mean, obviously you guys would probably know by now, it's probably my favorite faction in the game at the current time. That can change from time to time, but as it stands right now, they're definitely my favorite faction. And yeah, I really like showing off replays, not only against the Empire, but as the Empire, to try and help improve Empire play across the board. So yeah, this build was pretty similar to my opponent's. Again, we just fine-tuned a few things, took everyone out of the air, brought life instead of amber, and just went wider with infantry. You know, leave the halberdiers at home, just bring state troops with shields, spearmen and swordsmen will do the job just fine, especially the Sigmar's Sons. Look at that, 115 kills. These guys are a nice counter to High Elf spearmen, and of course their armor, or sorry, not their armor, their shield means they're a little bit more resistant to archers and other elite High Elf missile units, and yeah, just in general, a very good unit here. The silver bullets I didn't quite catch. They were able to support that that initial engagement with the Royal Altar of Griffites and the other units, but they did end up getting pounded out, I think, by the archers. Or no, that's right, it was Tyrion's Sunfang that roasted him out. I didn't quite catch that, but very good play by my opponent there to finish off the silver bullets. Very high value unit and a great target for the Sunfang. But yeah, they were able to get a little bit of HP damage done on the Fireborn before they went out. The one unit of Reiksguard that punched through on the left flank, because my opponent only had the one mobile unit to protect, they were able to just roll around the back line with impunity. The other Reiksguard that got involved with the Fireborn, able to kind of survive that engagement enough to get 91 kills. The other one only 39, but still, all three Reiksguard, very key. Of course, the Royal Altar Griffites as well, doing a ton of damage to the Fireborn and providing that nice terror option. And yeah, overall, Hammer of Witches didn't do a whole lot, but it was distracting the shots of these Eagle Claw Bolt Throwers for a while. So rather than them shooting at my Reiksguard or my Royal Altar Griffites, which arguably would have been better targets, they were focused instead on the Hammer of Witches, which is understandable. Certainly, there's some hard decisions to be made there, but I would argue that you probably want to, like in the last replay, like I did, you would want to focus on the heavy cavalry rather than on the cannon, because yeah, I mean, the cannon, you can potentially shut it down there. Like, my opponent was able to win that artillery duel, but had he shot instead against my cavalry, you know, they would have been potentially weaker. He might have been able to beat them down with the Fireborn and actually win that cavalry engagement. So it's tough to say. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below, though. Hope you guys enjoyed this Empire versus High Elves double cast, kind of analyzing this matchup a little bit more in depth. I know since my overview of the Empire video, I am planning on releasing a more build guide video. I don't know, though. I'm not the biggest fan of build guides in the world. I more like to provide just kind of basic concepts, and for you guys to then build your own builds that you're comfortable with using and that you find fit your play style well, because people use different kinds of builds and there are lots of things that are viable. But just because you guys have been asking so much for it, I probably will end up making a build guide video for the Empire for the current patch. But let me know what you guys think. Of course, we'll be having plenty more content upcoming, so subscribe for more. And if you do like this sort of content, be sure to share it with your friends. You know, I'm definitely always looking to grow, so if you find this content informative and helpful, be sure to share it around, and we can all get better together. So yeah, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one.